Hey everyone, I am David Greelish from Classic Computing, and this is Stan Veit's History of the Personal Computer. From Altair to IBM, A History of the PC Revolution by Stan Veit, Editor-in-Chief Emeritus of Computer Shopper. And this is the book that we're talking about, and that was my intro I did for the podcast, so to keep it consistent. But I'd like to welcome Randy Kindig, who joined. We're going to talk about it, but he joined me later to start reading chapters of this book. And so, hi, Randy.
Hi, David.
My
Good to
co-host.
see you again, man.
And thank you for joining me. And
I'm glad to be here. I love this book, as I told you, and I'm happy to be involved with you in helping get this out to everybody.
And so Randy is of the Floppy Days Podcast. So why don't you take a quick moment and just tell anybody who's not familiar with you a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, as you said, I've been a podcaster for a dozen years now. It's hard to believe it's been a dozen years, but I do the Floppy Days podcast at floppydays.com. I also have been doing the Antic podcast, which is an Atari 8-bit computer-only podcast.
And that's been around for a while too now.
Yeah, also 12 years. I do that with two other podcasters. And then I'm also involved with another one called Next Without For, and we talk about vintage computer languages and programming vintage computers. So obviously I spend a lot of my time podcasting and a lot of time with the hobby. I retired a couple of years ago, so that gave me more time to spend with the hobby. And happy to be doing this with you, David.
Well, thank you. And so Randy and I, well, let me tell a little backstory is, don't know where I have notes here, but might jump around a little bit. I discovered podcasting, I think roughly 2006. So, podcasts were kind of new. They weren't brand new in 2006, but pretty new still. And Earl Evans, Retro Bits is one of the first ones I discovered. And going blank here. The
Retro Bits was the first one I discovered.
Sorry, go ahead.
I gotta say, Retro Bits was the first one I discovered as well. I mean, Earl is the one that got me hooked on podcasts. And it was kind of, like you said, it was kind of a new thing at the time, but I was happy to find his podcast, and then it really got me into retro computing at that point.
And so I decided I want to try podcasting, and I did a couple of solo ones, and I was very nervous and it was uncomfortable, and I stopped. And so just fast forward a little bit. Well, actually, I need to go back further. So see, I'm already messing up on time scale, but that was around 2006. Okay. So actually, I'll continue the story. So basically, I had the idea of what if I made an audiobook version of one of my favorite books, and then we'll go into the backstory of the book and Stan Veit. And so I reached out to Stan Veit and his publisher, and the book had been out since 1993 by that point. And most of the copies, I think, were no longer available, physical copies. And Stan was getting rather old at the time, and I knew him personally, not super close, but I'd met him in person and knew him, for a while. And he liked the idea, and then he reached out to the publisher, and they said, "Yep, it's okay." And so I decided to start doing an audiobook podcast of this book. And so total, there's 9 chapters up right now. I think off the top of my head, I did maybe the first 5 or so, or you jumped in around, or maybe I did 4, you did 5, and back and forth.
I don't remember. Yeah,
it's been I got a couple show and tell things. I'm kind of going out of order what I intended, but it's okay. But yeah, here's a letter from November 10th, 2006, and it's from Stan Veit. And he's saying, "Dear David, as copyright owner of Stan Veit's History, the ISBN number, copyright 1993, I hereby grant you permission to present verbally by electronic media the contents of the book," and so on. So that was really exciting. The problem is life gets in the way, and it's gotten in the way of me a number of times. And even though Randy jumped in, because I kind of stopped doing it, and a lot of time went by, and then you volunteered to start doing some, and then it just kind of stopped again. But why don't you tell the story of, like, you just reached out to me recently, and just maybe talk about that a little bit, because it's kind of a neat coincidence about why we're doing this.
I mean, I pinged you, I don't know, a couple months ago, and I know we've been talking on and off the last 2-3 years about getting this started back up again. and you had a lot of things going on in your life, and just didn't have the time to. And so recently I pinged you again. Now that I'm retired, I've got more time. And I said, I'd be happy to jump in with you again and try to get this going. And it turned out that I guess I hit you at the right time, because you were ready to get it restarted.
Right. I was just about to reach out to you about it, because I had this, what I thought was a great idea, that, sometimes when you collaborate with people, and I learned this when I finally relaunched the Retro Computing Roundtable, and then I had co-hosts, right? That when you collaborate with people, it kind of keeps you honest and makes you more diligent, and and then I think it makes it easier too to do things. So I said, why don't we just do the chapters together? We can just, and I want to do it as a YouTube video, even though it's just us on video, but we just read it here and we just take turns. And I just thought that'd be a great idea. So that is what this is, an intro to how we're going to continue with this book. Stan Veit's History of the Personal Computer. This is my copy of the final edition. Stan Veit there. And so our next...
And I would say this is the first time I've seen the hard copy version. Mine is not hard copy. It's it's a paper cover, but
yeah. So he sold nice hard copies and mostly soft copies. These are a little bit more expensive, but over the years, this is my main one. But I've had numerous copies of this. I think I mentioned to you, Randy. I actually, in my newsletter, Historically Brewed, I sold his book, and so I was selling hard copies and the soft. What do you call it? Soft copy. Anyway, what do you call that? Paperback, I guess.
Softbound, paperback.
Softbound, yeah. So I probably sold 300 copies of his book over the years.
And I think that's how I got mine. I'm pretty sure I'm off of you.
So when everybody checks in with us again, it's a short chapter, then the next one will be longer, but it'll be chapter 10, the digital group. So with that being said, we're going to talk just a little bit about Stan Veit. And so real quick, why don't you do that?
Well, I mean, you know Stan a lot better than I do, but I'm happy to talk about what I know about Stan. I know he was one of the early pioneers of computer stores. He ran the Computer Mart in New York City, which was the first computer store in New York City.
If I'm not mistaken, it was the second in the U.S. I think he always claimed the world. That part I'm not 100% sure, but definitely the second in the U.S.
And I never did check. That's one of the questions. I've had some recent interviews on Floppy Days with Paul Farrell.
Oh yeah.
Paul Terrell. I'm sorry, yeah. Paul Terrell. Paul Terrell, who had the bike shop, and I don't know, if he knew Stan or if there was. I don't know if his was before the Computer Mart, or I'm not sure what order it was. But anyway, it's really cool that he had one of the very first computer stores. He also was an editor of a lot of different magazines, some really groundbreaking magazines like Popular Electronics.
Yeah.
Which I think probably everybody who's listening to this knows about the Popular Electronics magazine, where the Altair was introduced. And then he was editor-in-chief of Computer Shopper, which I think you have a show and tell there, right?
Yeah, so this is a typical Computer Shopper from its height. This is September 1992. So
look how thick that is.
It's not just a magazine, it's a weapon.
Yeah.
you could really hit somebody with this thing.
Big as a phone book. As phone book were in those days.
So of course he was the editor, and I don't remember exact years, but from its early incarnation, which was a lot smaller than this. And I believe he ultimately became the editor-in-chief emeritus. And I'm not sure if he was at this point in time. I believe he was, but just to show you, so the book, and I have this marked off here, the book is based on the columns he had, maybe starting in the early 90s, not sure exactly when.
I like how you use a floppy disk as your bookmark. That's cool.
I was hoping you'd notice.
Electronics Boutique.
And so his column is called Whatever Happened To. And so it was a computer history, nostalgia, retro column. This one's called "Whatever Happened to Time Sharing Multi-User Personal Computers." So then he took a lot of these articles and he published that book in 1993.
He also published several other books, which I didn't even realize.
Yeah, one with Les Solomon early on.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I still have it. I used to have it.
It's called Getting Involved with Your Own Computer. Mm-hmm. Oh, so you've got a copy of that? I've never seen that.
I did. I think I might still, but I got a bunch of books in boxes too somewhere. Yeah, and that was early on, I think, when he was still at the Computer Mart, because we're talking like 76 or something, 77. And I believe he ran that store to maybe 79, 80, something like that. But in the show notes, I'll link off to some, like an article about those days and pictures of these things and so on. But okay, just getting along in the story here, a little backstory. So real quickly, in about late 1992, I decided I got into computer history. I just got all excited about computer history, and ultimately I wanted to collect personal computers. And I got online for the first time. I was in the Army and I was in Germany, and I got on CompuServe. And the neat thing was that even though I actually lived off base, I lived in a German house in a German town, but I was able to dial up locally and get on the American CompuServe. So no different than if I was in the U.S., a local phone call. And then I found a little forum that Stan Veit ran, and it was about discussing old computers and his columns and everything else. And so I met him that way. And then ultimately I moved back to the States early 1993. And then I started a group called the Historical Computer Society. And I decided to, start printing a newsletter. And so this is a letter that he sent me in 1993. And he lived in Titusville, Florida by this time, by the way. And then he stayed there for the rest of his life. He lived in New York City before that. But he says, "Dear David, well, I see you have started the Historical Computer Society, and I congratulate you for your efforts. I would like to make a few suggestions if you don't think it's presumptuous of me." Actually, this is funny. First, the name. I suggest that you add something to identify the fact that you're talking about personal computers. Anyway, he says some other stuff. But he also sent me a check for $15. And he was my very first subscriber to my newsletter, Historically Brewed, which he's talking about the name of the Historical Computer Society here. But later on, I kind of thought Historically Brewed wasn't such a great name, and I was going to change it to Classic Computing. But anyway, and then ultimately I got to meet him in person when I was in Texas here. I was in El Paso, Texas. But I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, my hometown now, and I had moved back after the Army. And then he was in Titusville, and I got to meet him and hang out with him and his wife for a while at one time. So
that's cool.
I already told you about the book. So, I started a newsletter. I did all this other stuff I'm not going to talk about right now. And then ultimately I decided to do the podcast. So I think that brings it full circle, right? Oh, wait, one other thing. In the letter, when he said, I see that you've started, and he sent me a check, but he also sent me this, which was an advance uncorrected proof of his book. And again, this is one of my favorite books, not just because of this, because he sent it to me and I got an early edition, but it's just I really like his writing style. It's very conversational, and just, it's like you're sitting across from him and he's telling you these great stories, which most good writers kind of do that.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's just, and the great thing I've always said is the great thing about history is that no matter how old it gets, it doesn't get old, or I mean, who knows if it's 100% accurate, but it's his stories still are timely even now because they're about the past.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite computer history books, no doubt. And I like the fact that each chapter is, just a piece of history. It talks about a particular company, and it talks about their or a particular computer or a particular model of computer. And it's just interesting to hear the perspective of somebody who was there when all of this was happening, and he was selling a lot of these computers at a store. So it's a great history book.
And especially that it discusses a lot of the lesser known by a lot of people these days, lesser known computers than Apple, Atari, Commodore, IBM, and so on.
He does talk about those in some later chapters, but
excuse me.
But he does in his early chapters talk about a lot of computers, as you said, that people have never heard of.
There are even some obscure ones after those, well into the late 70s. Just since we're talking about it too, what does it go up to? Let's see, since we're going to be reading all the chapters.
I know it goes to the PC Junior is one of the later chapters.
Oh, you know what? Yeah. So, the Osborne, let's just do it. So when we come back, we're going to be reading the digital group computers, one of the shortest chapters in here. And then next, one of the longest chapters, the TRS-80, almost everyone's computer. And then Commodore, from PET to Amiga, the Atari story, then the TI-99A, the computer that refused to die. A look to the North Star. Probably most people haven't heard of that. Well, maybe our
That's
audience,
true.
but the Osborne Skyrocket, Vector Graphics, the Digital Doorstop. I don't know what that one is. Since we're already talking about the digital group, I won't spoil it. The Computer Pack, which is Polymorphic, Heath Morrow, and Bill Godbout. So those are all S100s. And then he's got a chapter of PCs that never made it. And then Dogs and Dinosaurs. This is going to get good. I know I've read it before. It's been a long time. And then How do you make a computer disappear? The triumph of the IBM PC, the IBM PC Junior, computer magazines created the channels. And then he talks about Computer Shopper, from Yellow Rag to Major Magazine. He talks about his history there. So that'd be great. And then chapter 27 is Uncle Sol's Toys. So that's Leslie Solomon he's talking about, like the co-author of that book. And the processor technology Sol was named after him in his honor. And then last one is Breaking the $1,000 Printer Barrier. Well, and then there's an appendix, a remembrance of George Tate. So we have a lot to read, Randy.
There's a lot to read.
We have a lot.
And I know the plan is that you and I together are going to take turns reading different sections of it. And then we plan on talking about it afterwards.
Thank you.
Just to maybe give additional color, our thoughts, our opinions, and maybe even just a little more information about that particular computer or that company that we might be able to find. So we just want to enhance a little bit what he has in his book.
We'll come armed. So
right.
Before we show up for each one. Yeah, because some of these, frankly, I know the very basics, polymorphic, but very basic. So, I'm sure Stan will tell us a lot more about it, but yeah, we'll research it so we can comment a little bit better. So very exciting, right? I'm really excited.
It'll be fun.
And I try to, I'm the kind of person, I try to do what I say. Like, I'm a big believer in say what you mean, do what you say. And so I committed to Stan that I was going to read this book, and I've never forgotten it. So I'm glad that we're going to, I can fulfill that. Unfortunately, Stan died in 2010. You'd put that in the notes, Randy. So he's born in 1919. So he was almost 90 years old. He lived a good life.
Yeah.
And I did write I wrote an article about his life a little bit more after he died, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes. But how about before we close then, Randy, and some of the notes you put here, one that we have already done is, of course, Apple, and there's a really exciting thing there. So maybe you can just talk about the few little highlights of some of the and before you do that, so the chapters 1 through 9 exist right now, but they're just audio podcast. And so we're going to do this obviously as a YouTube video, and then also Randy will be releasing the video as well as the audio, like a traditional podcast on Floppy Days. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what I was talking about? Like the story about him and Apple. I think you're about to talk to that.
The story about him and Apple.
Do you remember that? The highlight of that? No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
What's it? We had it. He was involved with Steve Jobs at a. He went to a show, one of the early shows. It's in that chapter, and I don't mean to put you on the spot because that's about the most I remember about it. So Stan Veit went to a computer show, or had Steve Jobs in his booth, and then he had ripped jeans or something, and his wife Dee Dee forced Steve Jobs to go in the back and take his pants off so she could fix them.
Oh yeah,
before the show, something like that. That's a highlight. So
one thing I need to do before we do our next show is I need to reread the entire book so it's all fresh in my mind. Yeah, because it's been a while since I read some of those early chapters.
And just real quick, I'll say what they are. And I just didn't want to do all the talking. I was trying to. So the first chapter is called Computer Camelot on the Hudson, and it talks about the Computer Mart and him opening that store, that history. And then the second chapter is called Rashomon, and it's about the Altair, and it parallels that's a famous Japanese story. I don't remember. It's very interesting. It's very good. I don't remember what that was about, but and then MSci is chapter 3, then Southwest Technical Products is chapter 4, and then chapter 5 is the early days of Apple Computer, and then chapter 6 is Cromemco, and then chapter 7 the Sphere from Bountiful, chapter 8 is Ohio Scientific, and then 9 is the Saga of Processor Technology and Soul. So, and you read that one, definitely. The last one you did.
Yeah.
All right,
David, do you know I mean, you don't still have any of the books left, right? If anybody was interested in getting a copy. Okay.
I
And
don't.
they go for quite a bit of money if you try to buy one on Amazon because they're rare, right? They're hard to get.
Yeah, which is funny. A lot of people don't know about the book, or if you don't know what you don't know, how good the book is and stuff. And so, near like sometime in the mid 90s or whatever, I was buying cases of the book from the publisher, and they were giving me like a really good deal on them. I think it basically only cost me like $1 or $2 a piece for like 100 at a time. As I said, I
That's
sold a
amazing.
few cases of the books, but I guess they were maybe having a hard time to sell it because I mean, obviously Stan Veit had a good audience in the computer shopper, but it's a niche audience, so I'm not sure what ultimately how well the book sold. But
I wonder if it would still be possible to talk with them about another printing or something.
Yeah, and I know that the publisher they're not around anymore. I tried to look them up actually the other day. And
Okay.
The original publisher is called WorldCom, and then they were purchased by another company, and they were like in North Carolina. But maybe we can try to look into it. That would be neat.
Yeah.
But I will mention, someone a couple of years ago, you can get the book as a pretty decent, high quality download from the Internet Archive, which technically is breaking copyright laws, but it's not being sold anymore. But I'll put a link to that because it's a great book.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that our watchers or listeners had a way that they could get the book, if they
follow
wanted
along.
to get it. Yeah.
But I looked too, like on you're right, on eBay. I think the cheapest one I saw is like $75.
Oh gosh, the ones I've seen are more than $100. I mean, yeah, they're rare. So I would never sell mine though.
Me either. Or my uncorrected proof, which I've never looked to see what changed. That might take a lot of time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you ever went through that in detail to see what changed between that
maybe a
and the
little
final
bit.
copy.
That'd take a lot of time.
Yeah,
so,
it would.
All right. What any closing thoughts? Oh, maybe tell the audience what are you up to until we come back and do this. What you got going on? You can advertise. You
Mainly. Oh, what you mean? What I'm doing on the podcast?
Yeah. Like, what are you up to? You did the interviews with Paul Terrell, the Byte Shop.
I've been doing right. So I try to do the computers. I talk about an individual computer from starting with the Altair, and then I try to talk about them in the order that they were released in history. So I am up to 1982. The last machine I talked about, I'm trying to remember what it was. It's been a while because I've been doing so many interviews lately. I have had people contact me like Paul Terrell and recently Chuck Morrow, who's a big Apple guy. He worked for Apple. He worked with Steve Jobs and so on. And I've just had a lot of people contact me about interviews. So I've been doing a lot of interview shows lately as well. So on Floppy Days, I do some computer shows and then some that are interviews with people who were involved, back in the day primarily. And then, yeah,
interviews are fun.
they are fun.
I'm doing an
and
interview
you make friends.
this Sunday, by the way, too.
Are
with,
you?
James Denton, and he's kind of the keeper of the Lisa M, the emulator program, since Ray, the creator, died. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So
nice.
And about the state of it and everything. But I also recently interviewed Andrew, young man that made did you see that where he made Lisa GUI? It's a simulator of the Lisa
Mm-hmm.
web-based?
I
Pretty
just,
cool.
yeah.
But before we go, just tell the audience. So Paul Terrell is famous because of the Bite Shop.
Bike shop. He's the one
And
that started the bike shop and ran it for a long time.
you're kind of noteworthy
he
for one particular thing.
Yeah, he bought the Apple Ones. He was the very first dealer to buy the Apple Ones from
The
Apple
of them.
Computer. Yeah, exactly. And I know that Woz still considers Paul as like one of the founders of Apple, because if he hadn't bought their first set of Apple One computers, who knows? They might not have ever made it, and history
Yeah.
would be different.
And that's the whole story of where they had to, their dream came true. They sold 50 Apple Ones, but then the nightmare happened that we got to build these things. Right?
The good thing is we sold 50 Apple Ones. The bad thing is we got to build them.
Yeah. And really that
And
kickstarted the whole thing. And now
yeah.
I think Apple is now the most valuable company again. I don't know. They fight with Microsoft back and forth, but it's insane, right?
It is. The numbers that they throw around as far as what those companies are worth, it just blow your
Yeah.
mind. Yeah.
But all right. So we'll call it a day for now, and Randy and I will discuss when we're coming back, and we'll read this chapter and get it on the air. I'm excited to get it done. Yeah,
Sounds
you're
good. Me
retired, so you
too.
got all the time in the world, right? I'll see
Oh,
you
yeah.
tomorrow, and
Well,
we'll do it.
all right, David. We'll do it soon.
All right, so
Thank
see
you.
you soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
It's Stan Veit's History of the Personal Computer. From Altair to IBM, A History of the PC Revolution. By Stan Veit, Editor-in-Chief Emeritus, Computer Shopper. Copyright 1993 and 2014 by Stan Veit and A-Books Creativity Incorporated.